Hello, Symposiast. I'm Dr. Angela Puca, Religious Studies PhD and University Lecturer, and this is your online resource for the academic study of magic esotericism, paganism, shamanism, and all things occult. Today we have a bit of a different topic from usual, a bit more philosophical perhaps. I was wondering to myself, why does truth not matter anymore? In the contemporary world, it appears increasingly evident that truth has lost its privileged status in public discourse. It is not merely that facts are disputed, it is that their necessity seems diminished. Emotional resonance, ideological affiliation, and simulated realities frequently triumph over empirical verification. To understand why truth no longer matters, we must investigate deeper cultural and philosophical currents. So, I want to propose the hypothesis that the collapse of truth is the consequence of two intertwined phenomena: the condition of hyperreality, as described by Jean Baudrillard, and the pathological eruption of the shadow, as theorized by Carl Gustav Jung. Together, they reveal how the representation of non material dimensions of human experience, alongside the saturation of science divorced from reality, have probably led to our current epistemological crisis. So let's start with the first part about Baudrillard's hyperreality and the death of the real. Jean Baudrillard, in his seminal work Simulacra and Simulation from 1981, offers a radical diagnosis of late capitalist culture: the death of the real. He contends that modern society has moved beyond the age of representation, where signs and images sought to reflect a deeper reality, and moved into an era where simulations have supplanted reality altogether. What began as faithful imitations gradually became distortions, and then masks concealing the absence of any underlying reality, until finally the simulation itself becomes autonomous, existing without reference to anything beyond its own self contained network of signs. Hyperreality is thus not an abstract philosophical fancy, but a lived condition. It saturates the contemporary landscape through media spectacles that stage politics as theater, through advertising that sells lifestyles rather than products, and through digital platforms where curated online personas bear only the faintest resemblance to actual lives. In such a world, appearances are not superficial layers hiding deeper truths. Rather, they are the truth that is consumed, performed, and reproduced. Baudrillard famously observes that the real is no longer what it was. Nostalgia assumes its full meaning. This nostalgia is not for a specific past, but for the very experience of reality itself, an experience now increasingly out of reach. People long for authenticity, even as they immerse themselves ever more deeply in its simulation, unable to disentangle the two. In this hyperreal environment, truth becomes a casualty. The traditional standard by which truth was once measured, its correspondence to objective reality and facts, loses coherence when reality itself is submerged beneath layers of mediation. Then, what matters instead is affective power. Whether a narrative feels convincing, whether it fits into the symbolic structures people inhabit. In such a regime, emotional impact and aesthetic coherence within a simulated frame eclipse empirical verification. Fact and fiction bleed into one another, and the very question of what is real is rendered irrelevant to most. Thus, Baudrillard helps us to see that the contemporary disregard for truth is not merely a moral failing or an intellectual oversight, but the inevitable consequence of living in a culture where simulations have become more real than the real itself. Let's move on to what Jung can teach us about what's going on. While Baudrillard elucidates the external collapse of reality under the weight of simulations, I've used Carl Gustav Jung to offer a complementary internal perspective. This is obviously my own hypothesis using a Jungian lens as well as the lens of Baudrillard to try and understand what is going on in our society at the moment. And using the Jungian lens, what I thought about is the psychological cost of modernity's exclusion of the non material part of human experience. We know Jung's theory of the shadow, that dark unconscious reservoir of rejected aspects of the self. In Jung's analysis, elaborated most notably in Ion from 1951 and Modern Man in Search of a Soul from 1933, the shadow is not merely a repository for personal flaws or moral failings. It embodies all those potentials, instincts, and imaginative capacities which the conscious ego denies in its attempt to conform to societal norms. Left unacknowledged and unintegrated, the shadow does not simply vanish, it festers, grows autonomous, and ultimately erupts in projections onto the external world. Now, since the Enlightenment, Western culture has increasingly privileged the material, the measurable, and the rational. The metaphysical, symbolic, and imaginal dimensions of human existence were systematically marginalized, dismissed as superstition or irrational fancy. The result, using a Jungian lens, was a profound psychic imbalance, a hypertrophy of the rational mind at the expense of the symbolic and intuitive faculties essential to wholeness. This one sided development has consequences not only for individuals, but for the collective psyche. By banishing myth, ritual, and spirituality to the periphery, modernity has created a shadow that now returns in distorted and sometimes grotesque forms. It manifests in the proliferation of conspiracy theories that offer mythic narratives in a world stripped of meaning, in political and social movements that channel repressed energies into collective fantasies, and in the widespread refusal to engage with empirical reality when it threatens emotionally invested identities. Thus, the rejection of non material reality, of the symbolic, the unconscious, the spiritual, has not led to a purely rational society, as Enlightenment thinkers hoped. Instead, it has led to a cultural neurosis. The shadow, denied conscious expression and integration, erupts through the very fabric of hyperreality, blending fantasy and fear, myth and misinformation, in ways that undermine the possibility of discerning truth at all. Through Jung's lens, we see that the crisis of truth is not simply cognitive, but spiritual. It is a symptom of the modern psyche's estrangement from vast and vital dimensions of itself. So, what can we do about all of this? If the collapse of truth stems from both the structural dissolution of reality, as Baudrillard argues, and the psychic fragmentation wrought by the repression of the non material, using a Jungian lens, then any meaningful response must address both dimensions, the external and the internal, the epistemological and the psychological. First, we might want to cultivate a renewed commitment to critical consciousness. Critical thinking has often been misunderstood as mere skepticism or intellectual nitpicking. In its richer sense, however, it is an ethical posture towards the world, a disciplined, self reflective engagement with evidence, a vigilance against the seduction of emotional reasoning, and a constant interrogation of one's own assumptions and biases. As Miranda Fricker notes, critical thinking is not merely a cognitive skill, but an exercise of epistemic virtue. a moral responsibility to the truth, however uncomfortable or inconvenient. Yet, critical thinking alone is insufficient if it operates within the impoverished, imaginative ecology of hyperreality. Thus, alongside epistemic rigor, there must be a reclamation of the symbolic. Ernst Cassirer famously described the human being as animal symbolicus, a symbolic animal, a creature who lives not in a purely material world, but in a world mediated by symbols, myths, and narratives. To ignore this dimension is to misunderstand human nature itself. We might want, therefore, to create educational, cultural, and spiritual spaces that nurture not only rational faculties, but also the symbolic imagination. This does not entail a return to irrationalism or the rejection of empirical science. Rather, it calls for an integral rationality, a rationality capacious enough to recognize that myth, ritual, and imaginative vision are essential components of a meaningful human experience. Moreover, societies might want to consciously foster practices that integrate the repressed aspects of the psyche. Jungian psychology suggests that the confrontation with shadow, an honest, painful recognition of what has been denied, can lead to individuation, a more balanced and resilient self. Applied culturally, this means creating opportunities for critical self examination, for symbolic expression, and for communal rites of reflection and renewal. Applied culturally, this means creating opportunities for critical self examination, for symbolic expression, and for communal rites of reflection and renewal. Finally, public discourse must be reoriented toward truthfulness not as a cold adherence to data points, but as an existential commitment to reality and facts in its fullest sense, including the material, the symbolic, and the relational. As Hannah Arendt warned, the erosion of truth is not just an intellectual problem, but a political one. Without a shared commitment to truth, freedom itself disintegrates. To awaken from the spell of hyperreality and the tyranny of the unintegrated shadow demands nothing less than a renaissance of consciousness, a renewed capacity to think critically, imagine symbolically, and live authentically. Only by reuniting reason and imagination, truth and meaning, can we hope to navigate our way back from the precipice and reforge a world where truth once again matters. Thank you so much for listening up to this point. I'm very curious to know what you think about today's episode. Obviously, this is a bit different from my normal, usual content, and it is more based on my personal philosophical reflections. But I still felt like I wanted to share this with you guys. So I hope that you found it useful. And I definitely want to know in the comments what you thought about it. If you like my project of delivering free academic scholarship on all things esoteric and the occasional philosophical rant, please consider supporting my work using PayPal. You can send me donations on PayPal, join memberships here on YouTube. You can also send donations on Coffee. You can join my fantastic Patreon community. That would definitely be a fantastic way of supporting me, but also joining an amazing community. We have monthly lectures, a book club, monthly gatherings, a Discord server. There's really lots there, and you can decide what you want to take advantage of depending on your chosen tier. And also, please check out my services and my courses at drangelapuka.com, my own website, where you also find a way to sign up for my newsletter and get all the updates and pictures and everything that I don't post on social media. And yeah, thank you so much for considering. You can also super thank me in the comments. So any help and support really matters. So I thank you very, very much in advance. If you watched the video up until this point, leave me a book emoji in the comments so that I know that you are super committed to your learning and that I am very proud of you. So yeah, if you like this video, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, leave me a comment again. I want to know what you think about this episode. I always read all the comments, even though I don't have time to respond to them all, but I do read them all. So I want to know what you think about this episode, and please share it around so that more people are exposed to this type of discourse and conversation, and also share any of the videos that you like around. I would really appreciate that. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, and I really hope that you stay tuned for all the academic fun. Bye for now.
Today we hold it